That was pretty banging.
I don't know what
Technically, that was the best one you did. That's what he's saying.
Welcome to the A Little Off Track podcast, recorded on Cherry Street in Galesburg, Illinois, with your hosts Eric Hansen, Ted Biebenauer, and Mandy Balser. 10 episodes is a tiny landmark and a wrap on season 1 of A Little Off Track, which is why we're especially delighted to have photographer Kent Kriegshauser. The incredibly vivid pictures in Life magazine had a profound effect on Kent and were really the start of his love of photographs. Let's listen in as Eric, Ted, Mandy, and Kent talk pics and go a little off track.
Yeah, there you go. Last night was an example of another thing that's changed from my earlier concert-going days. When I was 28, I didn't have to get up in the middle of the concert and go pee.
I do
now
that.
I'm 64, I do.
All right, so Aaron...
It depends on who's on stage, right? Right? I mean, if it was Neil Young, you won't take a pee during Neil Young and Crazy Horse, even today.
I don't know. I haven't been put in
Aaron
that
West
position.
and I...
Just pee your pants. Just like commit.
Aaron West and I saw the Grateful Dead one time up in Chicago. Actually, not one time, the very fucking last time that they played. In Chicago Soldier Field.
Yeah.
93.
And we're in there and may or may not have been under the influence of psilocybin. But
Really?
oh my gosh,
Wow.
yes. Woo! But we're watching the show, and then afterwards, like, I had to pee so bad because I didn't go the whole time. And we're standing in line in the bathroom, and the guy behind me was like, "Can someone push that dude and see if he's still awake?" Because they thought that I like passed out. I peed so long, and then we got out of there.
Psilocybin makes you pee?
I guess so.
Or let you hold your pee,
And
maybe.
Aaron was
water?
like, "What was the problem, man?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I had to pee since like trucking."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, I
Trucking.
did. I peed." Like we took in this gallon-sized thing of Crystal Light, and we were drinking out of that the whole time because that's when you could take your own drinks or
Yeah,
whatever
sure.
into a concert. And he's like, "I peed in the Crystal Light jug."
Wow. And you didn't notice that the person next to you was tinkling in a jug?
I was tripping balls.
Wow, buddy.
No, I did not notice.
I love this story.
There's 3 or 4 people who I would have liked to have been the 10th show. I'm glad Kent Kriegshauser is the 10th show.
Hey,
wow.
Number 10.
Number 10.
Yes.
Number 10.
We broke our...
Better than
No, number
one
10 is
digit.
number
great.
2.
Numbers,
Yes, it's better than number 2.
numbers mean a lot to Kent. That numbers mean a lot to him. Dates mean a lot to him.
Oh my gosh.
I like that.
One of the world's finest photographers. In my world, that may not be true to someone
Agreed.
else, but in my world, he's one of the world's finest photographers. I got to know this real quick. I don't know why I was thinking about this morning. And tell me, maybe this never happened, but I think it did. When you were a photographer in Chicago, was there ever a morning you went out and got the paper and you're like, I wonder if my shot made, or did you always know if your shot made it before you went to bed?
Never knew, and of course every photographer likes to see their picture
happened.
on the front page.
Chicago.
In Chicago, especially if it's a big story.
It was the Tribune or the Herald?
The Daily Herald and
The
Arlington,
Daily-
You went to Daily
Arlington
Herald.
Heights, yeah.
So your competition, you were the Herald, was what?
The main competition would have been the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, and then our equivalent on the South Side was called at one time it was called the Southtown Economist. It morphed into the Daily Southtown.
So there's 5 papers. You go out, you're the cock of the walk. There's your picture. Chicago.
Wow.
I mean, how good do you think that fit? And it's like
That's
Jordan.
rad.
Was it Jordan some morning?
Oh,
It,
yeah.
it could be Jordan. It could be news. It could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
something you shot the night before.
Sundberg, Mark, with the Cubs back then. Mark
Grace,
Mark
Ryan
Grace.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Man, you
Mark
just-
Sundberg.
You'll get it.
Andre
Smush 'em
Dawson.
together.
Yeah, you smushed like 10 great players together. That's awesome.
It's a hybrid.
My wife was going to kick me in
Mark
the nuts.
Sandgrace, the greatest Cub ever. Sandgrace Banks.
So there was competition with the papers, but we would see those guys, on shoots, and
Yeah.
the competition was fierce, but so the friendship was pretty good.
Was
too.
there a moment like early on, like as a new guy in Chicago, where you saw that and you were pretty proud and you went, That's me. I did that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, yes.
So
Yeah.
just to tip that over the edge
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
Back in those days, like today, everybody's got a phone that's got a camera on it. Everybody's got a digital camera. But back in those days, Kent was shooting film and slides.
Yeah.
So like you couldn't just take 600 shots and go, well, I guess one of these is going to be good.
Yeah.
You had a roll of
You
36.
don't know
36.
they're good until later.
That's
You
correct.
had 36 tries
No,
to do something amazing.
And you didn't
Right.
get to look at them after you shot.
Yeah.
exactly
Because
right.
right,
yeah.
that's the move of a photographer these days, right? They take the picture, then they look at
And
the
then they look at the camera.
Yeah.
That's your new move, Kent, right? For the
Well,
last 15 years.
that's what I did then, and then with digital, I'm just as bad as the next guy.
Yeah.
Well, but right,
Well,
but
yeah,
I
there's
mean,
no
like
sense
back
not working with technology.
when
but-
you got that Jordan with the tongue out
You
and the
didn't
hand
know it
about
until you saw the film.
didn't know, and you had to be good to be in the position where Kent.
And you know what?
Yeah.
The segue from that in with the music thing is
Yeah.
that Rob and I were talking last night about when we were younger, the anticipation to build up to a concert, the anticipation of knowing you got the shot, but whether it was in focus or not, so you had to wait until you got back to the office and process the film, and,
Yeah.
then you're like, oh my God, I hope I nailed the focus on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
had some really fun nights back in the early 90s probably with Kent.
Yeah.
Like back when the register mail was here and you were still shooting film, but they had this like processing room where you would go and you develop your film or you develop the slides, whatever you were shooting, and like you go into this little dark room and you're that like, oh my gosh, what did I get? What did I get? What did I get?
I still have two beautiful prints that you were very patient. Ted was adamant that we were going to get it right. One is of a livestock trucker, and one is of Red Skelton. And we
Oh my
print.
gosh.
We didn't print those at the paper.
No,
we printed
at,
those your-
Midwest Photo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they're beautiful black
Were
and white
you at
prints.
the Red
The-
Skelton shoot?
I
No,
was
no,
not
no.
there.
Yeah.
It was Kent's negative,
But,
but we
but
took
Ted
it
took the
in.
negative and made beautiful prints that are framed.
And you know
matte.
that shot, right?
I
that shot is
love it.
amazing. Yeah,
It was amazing.
There's some Kriegshauser in here. That one there. There's a shot you
Yep.
can't see at home. There's a studio of Ted and I in the FM 95 studios, and there's a Kent Kriegshauser original right above here.
That's fantastic.
That's my favorite at Kent shot. Kent, describe that moment. I'm pointing to the picture in the corner.
Well, that was Newman and Paul Newman and Mario Andretti at the time trials for the Indianapolis 500, and that was 1988.
Yeah,
And-
you're just walking down.
And I made one last pass to the north end of the track. It was late, very late in the day, and I was kind of walking with my head down, and I thought, oh, I'll make one.
Looking
more
at the pictures on your digital camera.
No, that's actually
So-
from a color slide. And I looked up, and there those guys and there's no one around them, and I'm the only photographer, and I was like,
arguably the greatest racer in the world,
Wow.
and arguably the greatest actor in the world, standing right there.
and Mario Andretti drove. I mean, Paul Newman was part owner of that race team.
Yeah,
Okay.
So that's the connection there.
Okay.
yeah.
The
So-
expression on both their faces is just.
Well, I was
very
hoping
serious.
that I
Right.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that they were just leaning there. And
Was that before the race or after?
That's during time trials.
Oh,
That's a couple weeks
gotcha.
before.
That's classic Paul Newman too. Though.
So-
I mean,
It
just look at that
is.
look.
Okay,
His
we're
face.
totally going to
Anyway.
put this in the show notes so you guys can see the picture that
Yeah,
we're talking
yeah.
about.
Oh yeah.
But holy crackers, like that is a great shot. And that's the eye that you have. Like this just
That was just being at the right place at the right time, and then thankfully they didn't scatter, because Newman he never signed autographs or rarely did, and it's like I looked at them and they looked at me, and I'm like, please don't move, and I made about 2 or 3 frames. That's the only one that I kept for some reason.
Wait, you
Now-
said please don't
No,
move?
I'm just thinking to myself.
Please don't
Yeah.
move.
And there was not a word exchange, but man, it was.
They saw your gear though. You with your gear on, you look like a guy who knows what he's doing with the camera.
I was near. I mean,
Yeah.
I was close by.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They let me do my thing, and I didn't disturb them, and it all worked out fine.
And then not far away from it is Kent at a rainy night, the very first Farm Aid in 1985 out in the audience, and just happens to get a pretty good shot of Bob Dylan raising his hand.
That is a
Backed
beautiful shot of Bob.
by the
Backed
great.
up by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Yeah.
It was it was a rainy day. I didn't shoot a lot of film that day.
So now that we've taken you all over the Kent Kriegshauser
Right.
landscape of photography, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy.
By the way,
Thanks for
coming.
if
Yeah.
everybody's good at the end of this episode, we've got some yummy stuff.
Really?
Yeah, we always have
Oh.
treats. I think
that
the worst
teaser.
treats we ever had on the show were Nikki Malley treats. We brought some processed shit for the chick who
I
brought.
went to Casey's and got scotcheroos. It was my turn
Way
to
to
bring
kick
the
Mandy
treat.
in the nuts
Nobody
there, Eric.
touched the scotcheroos, did they?
I don't know. You said to bring a treat
I
like
know, you
2
did.
minutes before coming, and I was like, I'm stopping somewhere on the way, which was Casey's in Knoxville. So
By the way, when I just said the worst treats we've ever had, I forgot that Mandy brought them.
Insert
So wait a minute.
foot into
They were
mouth.
Now
Pretty
my
good treats.
face is really
No.
warm and
No, you're fine. You're fine. But
do
you
remember.
guys, you have the benefit of knowing Kent already
Okay.
and a lot of his history, and I don't. So give me some background on like how
On
did
what?
you end up in Chicago? Is that where you were born?
That's you got it when you got out of jail.
Take
You
me
were in
there.
Chicago, right?
Right.
And somebody just handed you. Yeah,
I see. I feel like you're
recognize me
lying.
by
I am,
my
I'm lying
profile-
there.
by my profile
Hey,
shot.
tell us, when were those salad days in Chicago? What were the years?
I was in Chicago from June of '88 till March of '97 when I came down here, and I did
Wow.
not grow up there. I grew up in a small town,
Pittsfield.
Pittsfield, southwest of here.
Yeah.
So Chicago
Okay.
was I started at the Macomb Journal right out of college, and worked there.
Western? Did you go to
West-
Western?
I went to Western.
All right, go
From what
Leathernecks.
you describe, a pretty idyllic '60s boy upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pittsfield was a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
You know, my dad ran a hardware store. I would have been a third generation hardware store probably person, but Dad passed when I was 14. So,
Yeah.
and there were, I mean, going where we're going, just Mandy, there were two pivotal things. I saw Mick Jagger on the cover of Life magazine when I was 13 years old and I still have that magazine cover. Dad was still alive, and then Dad passed in May of 1973, and we were supposed to go to the Indianapolis 500, and he didn't make it. So my aunt stepped in, and there was a lot of rain that year, so we were able to upgrade our seats, and I saw the access to the cars that the photographers got.
Oh.
And I had always
That's
been
what I
interested in
wanna do.
photographers, so it was like the 72 Mick Jagger thing was so-so, but I'd say the light bulb really went on at the Indianapolis 500 in 1973, and I'm like, if the Stones don't recruit me or I can't drive a race car, the camera's going to give me a front row seat.
Isn't that amazing?
I
So-
love that
Yeah.
you put that together. Like
yeah.
just like this is the way to get where I want to go.
It
Yeah.
just, I mean,
How'd you get to Chicago, though? I don't even know that I know this about you.
I-
So you were at Macomb.
at Macomb, I built my portfolio. I mean, it's not for me to judge how good I am, but
Well, good enough to go to
got
Chicago.
Good enough to be
attention-
on this
I
podcast.
told you. I started off the show best in the world. Now move on.
well,
and look at that Casey hat he's got on, by
I know
the way.
I'm dying to ask about that hat, but
Oh
keep
my
on with
God.
Chicago.
well,
we'll come back to the hat.
quickly, I worked at Macomb for 3.5 years. Not that it matters, but I do believe like my starting salary there in 1983 was $11,700 a year.
Holy
Wow.
crackers.
So I paid my dues for 3.5 years, and then my portfolio, there was an opening at the Daily Herald. I sent it up, and I got hired. And
Tell me you were making 13 grand by the time you left.
I got a nice bump when
Oh,
I moved
good.
to Chicago.
Nice, yeah.
Well, you had to because it still
Right,
costs
right.
$46,000 a month for rent.
And then I was up there for 10 years. Most of it was at the Daily Herald.
Wait, don't go to Chicago yet. How do you get to Chicago? What'd you put together to get you to?
A portfolio of about 20 photos.
Yes.
You send, you compete against
What
other
Your
were the-
best
what was,
stuff.
What was
Yeah.
your best one at that time?
What was your best? Well, Red Skelton was in
He was
that.
in there?
all
Yeah.
right.
Nice.
I couldn't name them all off.
you shot him at Western.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was some what we call spot news. There's a difference between spot news and general news. General news, you guys know this from.
I don't have no
General
idea.
news is where you can plan for the event. Spot news is like
It just
breaking
happened.
breaking news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a variety.
You-
Feature photos, sports photos.
Tornadoes.
There was no. The only tornado I've ever seen is you, Ted.
Oh, all right.
Live and in person.
By the way, another podcast guest who can walk. We can throw a rock to Kent's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So close.
The theory holds you only get to come on if you can walk.
You
Walk
gotta be close. Mandy, I want to see you walk one day. It's not really.
I'm
it's
already
not
tired
that
about
bad.
that.
Ted and I ran a half
I'll ride my bike here. I'll be real
half
sweaty.
K,
A
half
K.
marathon.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay.
A half K.
Were
you there with the camera that day?
Oh, I was there, and that man stuck it out. I mean, my hat is off to you, Ted.
Yeah.
Fatty Boom Balatti finished it.
Man,
Is that the
oh,
first
man.
time you photographed a near-death experience?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fuck you, Mandy.
Sorry, you just
Let's see
walked
if
right
that
into
makes the
it.
cut.
Yeah, no, that does. That
Oh,
will make the
that'll
cut.
go in.
It's the
So
first.
where did you live at in Chicago? Like,
The first year I lived in Arlington Heights in an apartment complex because it was close by, and then as I learned my way around, I found an apartment complex in Schaumburg,
Closer to the.
further from the office, but much nicer. Actually, my balcony looked out over a horse farm,
oh,
and I had a wood burning fireplace. So
That's not a Chicago view you think about.
No,
No,
well,
not at all.
And then some of my friends ridiculed me for being a suburbanite. So about the last year and a half, I was in near Logan Square.
You got in the
Whoa.
city.
Yeah, I got into the city, and I'm glad that I did do
Yeah?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you love it?
I
Just
liked
because
it
it
a lot.
made
Yeah.
work a lot easy
Right.
getting to those places.
Well, I worked second shift, and so I could sort of traffic wasn't that much of an issue. I could sort of get focused on the way out to work, going from downtown Chicago to Arlington Heights, and then I could sort of focus, or not focus, but unwind on the way home from
Yeah.
work.
Sure, yeah.
So, and working second shift, I got to shoot a lot of sports, and I wasn't around the suit and tie crowd as much as, and that doesn't mean that I slacked or didn't do my job. It's just that I do better I just do better when I don't have people looking over my
Sure.
shoulder. Yeah.
I think most creative people do.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
Like, yeah, we blossom when the spotlight kind of goes away. It's like, give me a minute.
and so I did that. I worked for a year and a half while I was up there. I broke away from the Daily Herald, and I got an opportunity to work for an all-sports newspaper called the National Sports Daily that started in January of 1990 and folded in June of 91. And the
Wow.
reason it folded is we went through $200 million.
Whoa.
Ooh.
It started in New York,
Kent
Chicago.
took a lot of
Yeah.
slides.
So much film.
A lot of slides.
irresponsible spending.
It was those steak dinners on the
Yeah.
road. No, I'm teasing about it. So it folded. I went back to the Herald. Things had sort of changed at the Herald, and we could spend another hour talking about that. But I sort of burned some bridges up there with a dress code issue, and
I like
Doesn't
it
sound
already.
like you at all.
That's amazing.
I like
Making
it
people
already.
mad.
and so I ended up. I was exiled to Galesburg, and here I am about 26 years later,
Serving your term.
having fun with you guys.
Exiled to Gil.
Does the dress code violation have anything to do with the hat you're wearing right now?
No, the dress code violation had to do with we were supposed to wear neckties, and I was on my
Oh, my
way.
God, really?
I was on my way to a White Sox game, and so I wore like a polo shirt that day with no necktie, and I got called on the carpet. And so the next day I had a necktie on, but I also had a new pierced ear and a mohawk haircut.
Yes.
Hell
That's what happens after a White Sox
Oh,
game.
I like it.
It is.
And that didn't go over so well either. That was the beginning of the end.
I love you, Kent.
That's fabulous.
But you got-
That's a classic Kent story right there.
Kent's immense love of photography, music, and sports collide, creating an amazing career of pictures that spans 40 plus years. And the stories are countless, like the time Michael Jordan ran his fingers through Kent's hair before stepping onto the court.
What? You were in one of the most enviable spots that anybody could be in, except for being like right next to him after the game, seeing Michael Jordan underneath the basket, or being in the end zone at a Bears game, right?
All of
How
that.
amazing.
All that
That's
stuff. I mean,
never
it was. Mandy asked earlier. One of my dream jobs would have been to work for Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
And so, I've always loved sports photography. I sure don't do it as much as I used to, and I'm not maybe as proficient as I used to be. But it was enviable, Eric. it was a blast to be there, but there's always a lot of pressure to get those photographs and stuff. So it wasn't like you got to sit there and watch the game and have fun. You were expected to produce.
Chicago Stadium only, or the stadium and the United Center. Both. You did both.
Both. The stadium was. I was just telling Rob Miller last night. The buddy that he and his wife took Lori and I to see the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had taken more photos of Chicago Stadium, as not just to go in there and photograph the events, but to really have capture the character of that place, which was built in 1929.
Yeah. So you were working, like you said, the pressure, and some nights you were in and you're out. So getting the beauty of that place every night was probably.
It was always fun to walk in there, especially in the fall when we would go in to get like our photos taken for our press passes, or maybe, I don't know, to pick our press passes up. You know, the place smelled like fresh paint and stale beer.
Yes.
and there were no service elevators in that old building. And so between hockey games and basketball games, because a hockey rink is larger, this was when I worked for the National Sports Daily, not Daily Herald. We shot everything with
forgot
available
about
light.
Blackhawk games.
But we would with the National, I would have to go up to the rafters, which is like 90 feet above, and you would have to reposition the strobe lights. Because the hockey rink is bigger, so you would move them, more, and then with basketball, you'd move them in.
Wow.
And it was like your palms would sweat. It's like 90 feet seems like about 1,000 feet.
And then just in case you don't know, that's because that's where your flashes were.
Yeah, mounted in
so your camera would trigger these flashes that were up in the rafters, and that's how you got like that razor sharp, that tack sharp shot.
Yeah.
So like you didn't have just like a little flash or the pop up flash on there. Your flashes were up
They were
top.
Huge.
Oh wow.
And you had to do that.
Well, you would turn them on from downstairs. They were all hardwired, but I had to go up and, like I said, reposition them based on which sport I was photographing.
Yeah.
And would you be up there with people from the other papers?
No, because only the other papers didn't use the lights. The lights are something that annoys televisions, because if you pay attention sometimes you'll see a little quick pop of light, and so they only allow usually 3 or 4 sets of those lights in a building. And the National was a big enough player that we rented those lights at the Chicago Stadium.
Did Michael Jordan's sweaty ass ever fall on top of you?
No.
Did Michael Jordan ever put his sweaty ass on
Tell me who
you?
fell on top of you when you went. That was pretty cool.
I'm trying to think
was
if
an honor.
Rodman, of course, kicked that photographer one
Oh,
time.
right,
It wasn't me.
But that wasn't Ken.
No, it wasn't me. No.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan ran his fingers through my hair one time.
No
Nice.
way.
Yeah, coming out to start the second half, I had my back turned, and I was sitting talking to Joel Lerner, and it was just to start the second half, and my hair was longer then, and I felt this big hand run through my hair.
On purpose.
Oh yeah, on purpose.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
That's a true story.
Yes.
He had to dry his hands off somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Photographer heads.
it was.
Then you didn't wash it for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I did.
The goal.
I did.
The goal of Michael Jordan.
I
to think
know.
he could
Who
just
does he think he is?
put his hands on Kent's head.
Does he think he's Michael Jordan or something?
It's
It's pretty great.
Wait. Was this before or after Space Jam?
I think way before.
Because if he had already met Bugs Bunny by this time, and you've watched that hair.
How do you handle these guys, Mandy?
I just drank my coffee and
Let them go. They're gonna be
shake
them.
my head.
I'm being gang attacked here.
Yeah, they'll simmer down.
By the way, did we? High
We
above
never
Cherry
did an
Street.
And I love it.
intro.
I-
We didn't do an intro.
High above Cherry
Street. It's a little off track. We've got a little off track a lot, but that's okay. Kent's like he gets us back on track.
Yeah, right.
What's up
He's
with
like,
that?
hey, we're talking about this.
Yeah,
Guys.
he brings us
Yeah.
back.
Chop.
Well,
good.
the photography, it's been a privilege. I mean, it's never meant, you're asking me about experiences, and I never want to think, it's never like, it's not to brag. I'm a very fortunate guy to have done, I have an occupation that I still love it quite a bit. It's a little more, different than it was, but
Sure.
I've done
it's
it
still
almost 40 years now
Yeah.
Wow.
as a professional photographer.
Were you?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, were you super sporty as a kid? Is that like what drives the love of the sports photography specifically?
I love sports, but I was no good. It became obvious I wasn't going to play for the Cowboys or the Celtics. Yeah, and so I would study Sports Illustrated, and back in those days, in the photo credits weren't even under by the pictures; they were in like this little box in the back of the magazine.
Really?
So you had to go and look for who made the photos, and I was, the photography. I mean, not sports related, and unfortunately, with like Vietnam, we subscribed to Life and Look magazine, and I can remember those things landing on our doorsteps. And there's just, whether it's sports photography, I'm looking around the room here. I mean, there's just photography is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
From that.
And I picked up on it as a little kid.
Who shot that Mick Jagger 72 shot?
Jim Marshall,
Was
the
it
same guy that
your
photographed
guy?
the Johnny Cash photo up there on the ceiling.
He's your rock photographer. He's
He
your
is
guy.
the man. If you folks out there, if you don't know Jim Marshall's name, Google him because you'll know his work.
He's got a great coffee table book. You got it. You've got it, don't you? Yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. If you love photography, especially musical or rock photography.
There are many other really, really, really good ones, but he's kind of he's the guy.
So did you also develop all of your film when you were little? Like, did you have like a room that you went to, or did you drop it off at a shop where there was a local Ted character?
Early on, sent it to St. Louis. It would come back in a few days. Probably by the time I was 17, it doesn't take that much to put together a black and white dark room.
No.
And so I had a dark room in the basement.
That's so
I didn't
cool.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't even have running water, but you could still, and so then from that point on, I think I was able to process black and white. Color is a little bit more involved, and I didn't do that until I wasn't processing color until the Daily Herald.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would still do your own film there? You wouldn't just was there like a developing room
at the Daily Herald?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had 2 black and white rooms, and then the color processor actually, you went in and you turned the lights off. You could do up to 9 rolls at a time. You could flip the lights on, and then it was in a machine that did it all for you.
I see. Okay.
But that was the thing, like, you weren't sending that out to a shop.
Oh, you didn't have time.
No,
I mean,
well,
because you had
one, I didn't
deadlines.
have time because you had to do it right away, but also, like, if you had that $1 million Jordan shot,
yeah.
you didn't want anybody to see that before the paper got to see that.
Well, and Eric asked about, going to these games. Typically, a basketball game, a Bulls game, we would shoot a half, and then we had to leave to make deadline. And with a hockey game, we might shoot 1 period.
Really?
You're not there the whole damn
because
time.
we weren't digital, so we had to process the film.
Wow.
I'm surprised you didn't have, like, runners, though. Like, take these back and get these processed ASAP.
We did at the National.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had that luxury. My friend Mark Dial did some film running.
Well, and the equivalent of that nowadays is you have a little Wi-Fi antenna on top of your digital camera, and as you're shooting them, they are wirelessly going back up to
there you go.
to the paper or to the website or wherever.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that game has changed dramatically.
Man.
Yeah, but you did it back when it was hard.
Well, it was more. It was more. There were
real.
more stuff. I mean, if we left the game and we had a flat tire, we probably would miss deadline. It wouldn't be the end of the world because they could then get it from the Associated Press or whatever. But we had it pretty much timed to the minute.
Yeah.
Wow.
We knew when it was time
Do
to
you
go.
like that kind of stress?
Yeah. Well.
I mean, you must a
Did
little.
you-
Best
but
question of the day so
Yeah,
far.
right?
It was.
We leave the hard
Stress,
shit to
pressure.
her.
I'm not sure what the right word, but the payoff, if you got that great shot, was a little bit of an adrenaline rush.
Sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
hey, we did a good job tonight.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
the adrenaline that
Yeah,
you would
the
get from
adrenaline,
that.
yeah.
And then the that little chill that you get when you see it.
It was always.
Or what have you done for me lately? Like, sure, your shot was great last night,
yeah, you can't rest on your
But-
laurels there.
right?
My buddy Rich Chapman, who was a Daily Herald photographer, he said, "You're only as good as your last picture."
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah, exactly. You're only as good as
So-
your last
Always,
envelope.
and that could be some unnecessary pressure putting on yourself. I'm sure you got to have the constitution to deal with that.
I think another Rich saying was, "Do the best you can, but don't screw up," and don't screw up.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was. We had fun. We had about eight staff photographers, and then it grew and grew because the paper expanded. But we all had fun. But I mean, it was
Except
serious
if
business.
You weren't in a
Yeah.
necktie.
Except
then you got your ass kicked.
on an 80-degree day on a Friday going to a freaking baseball game, you know?
Yeah. Well, so many of those things happen over the weekend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did it become your life? Were you just always taking pictures, always at events?
No, I used to sort of like, I didn't always carry a camera with me wherever I went, and probably I should have. Because now, you know, we have, like Ted or Eric mentioned, we have the phone, so we always have
I'm
something.
a little surprised you didn't have it. Even in the era of phones, I've seen you at events come with a camera. I'm like, of course he's got his camera. You don't really need it at this event, but of course he's got his camera, you know?
Well, I find it easier to actually, believe it or not, even though it's extra book, I find it easier, it's more intuitive after all these years, to pick up and operate a camera than it is to dig my phone out of out of a pocket. So...
And there's something different about looking through the viewfinder too. Like, so a lot of people who have digital cameras probably have some sort of 24 to 80 or 24 to 105 zoom where you can make that frame encompass what you want it to. Back in the day, you were working with probably 35 millimeter, 50 millimeter, 100 or 200. So, like, it's static. You can't, if you want to get tighter, you got to go closer
or have the lens.
Yeah, have a different lens for it.
Yeah, and because back in those days, zoom lenses weren't. Zoom lens encompasses many focal lengths in one lens, whereas a telephoto lens, people get confused. A zoom does that. A telephoto lens is sort of a long distance lens, but it's one specific focal length.
Okay.
And in those days, what that's also called a prime lens. We're getting real technical here. But photographers would often carry at least 3 camera bodies to have 3 different lenses on, because if you had to take the time to change lenses, you've missed the moment. There's a very famous photo.
So you just drop one camera and pick up another camera.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a photo of Jim Marshall at Woodstock, and Jim Marshall shot Leica cameras, and he's got like 7 cameras around his neck and shoulders.
With different lenses.
So
you could get the wide shot or the tight shot.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to have a neck ache at the end of the night.
A good massage would feel good.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point. Like with a phone, like you pick it up and you can pinch and zoom and do everything else. But like with that camera, even if you have one lens, like the way that you look through that, you see through that viewfinder, and it's a different world than holding up your camera and just seeing, or holding up your phone and seeing what's on that screen. So like I totally get what you're saying about it being more intuitive to pick up that camera body and look through that lens than pulling your phone out and...
Well, and if I do carry a camera along on like if Lori and I were to go to LeClaire for the afternoon or something, I would take probably a 50 millimeter or a 20 millimeter lens, which is a 50 is kind of the standard, a 20 is wide.
Okay.
But if I were meeting you for coffee and we were going to take portraits, I would bring a different lens. So you already, in my mind, depending on if I'm just going to goof around for the day, I already know what my limitations are going to be or what I can do with that camera based on what lens I've decided to take along.
Kent and I have geeked out on this conversation more hours than I can imagine. Like I remember...
Theodore, you have more camera knowledge than I know. And
I know.
Theodore's
I'm impressed with it. I'm like, what the hell?
Theodore's
crazy.
That was my first life.
His knowledge, and Ted's a great photographer.
He is. He's great. He's great at framing. He knows light.
Oh, yeah.
He knows settings. I was blown away when we used to shoot weddings together. But I knew you had camera knowledge, but I was like, oh, wow, he really kind of knows all this shit.
Can I tell my favorite Kent Kriegshauser story?
Absolutely.
I think you have to.
Okay.
Does this involve 2 pictures?
Yes, it does.
Oh, yeah. Because when Eric said that you know light, I know exactly. Because I was thinking of the Seminary Street pub photo.
Yes, exactly.
Carry on.
So
Carry on, Theodore.
this was back in the early 90s, and Kent, there was at the Civic Art, what is the name of
Civic
that place?
Art Center.
Civic Art Center had a photography contest, a show.
Yeah.
And
The
both of us...
CAC or CAC.
Oh, the CAC.
It was a Friends and Members show, I think.
Yes, it was a Friends and Members. And so both Kent and I submitted photos to this this photo contest. And we at the time, Kent was working at the Register Mail. I was working at Midwest Photo. We were doing a lot of stuff together every time that we were out both of us had a camera.
We'd go
I
on
mean,
camera safaris
we
together.
would.
Yeah.
We would just get in the car, drive around, find some great light, and take photos. I mean, that was what we did for
that's
fun.
fun.
And you knew that you were the Robin to his Batman, right?
I felt
No,
like
no.
the
That was
Robin.
clear,
I
right?
felt like the Robin to
good.
his Batman.
I'm just kidding.
The story gets better.
Okay.
So we both enter photos into this contest, and I don't remember when it was exactly, but the show had been decided, and Kent and I were down at Cherry Street, and we were having dinner together, and both of us knew that we had placed, like we had been chosen, and they did first, second, third place, and we both knew that we had placed, but we weren't saying anything about it.
They were being gentlemanly to
Yeah,
each other.
To each
because
other,
we were-
okay.
yeah, like we didn't know who got first, second,
Sure,
third. We just
sure.
knew what each other got.
Okay.
And we didn't want to say anything because we didn't want to make the other person feel bad.
Right.
Like, oh, hey, I got such and such, and he
Right.
got such and such. So we just like danced around the topic
Yep.
like all
So
night long.
you
This
still
is
don't
accurate.
know?
Are you
think- was
revealing
that
it
when you-
today?
Who? Did
Oh,
you,
no,
Do you
no.
guys know?
Yeah, we know.
Oh, you know.
We know. You go.
Who won?
He got first and I
Ted
got
got
second.
first.
I got first. Kent got
The
second.
second or third even. I mean,
your butt.
No, you got
Isn't
second,
second?
place. I got first
Theodore,
place.
do you
and
know-
we just didn't want to like talk about it.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
To make because we were like, well, gosh, what if Kent didn't get anything? I don't want to make him feel bad. And he's like, well, what if Ted didn't get anything? I don't want to make
Sure.
him feel bad. My photo was of the Seminary Street Pub. It's a black and white, looking in the front door. Just these really dark light shadows, like the floor is
I know the
really
shot.
bright.
the,
Yes.
the light would bounce around in there off of that court like a tin ceiling and stuff.
yeah.
It
and
was just
it's a
beautiful. It was like
photo.
a silhouette of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then Kent's was a great photo of a bonfire and like these people in front of it, and the fire is a long exposure, so it's really it looks blurry. It looks like water in a long exposure photo. It's just gorgeous shot.
So they give you the thanks for showing up award. Thanks for showing up, Kent. Thanks for showing up.
Wow.
Here's your participation award.
it was fantastic though. like just neither one of us wanted to
It's
hurt
so
the other
great.
guy's
Yeah.
feelings.
Between that and not getting a pony as a child, I've been scarred ever
Yeah.
since. You know?
Right? Trauma, man.
I just want you to know, Kent, like, you're older than I am, but I will probably die before you, and it is in my will that you get that photo.
I would hang that. I would hang
And
it
I think
with
you're
pride.
obligated to tell that story at his funeral as well.
yes. This, but if you come and speak at my funeral, you got first, I got second.
No, no.
So great. I'm not going to forget.
That prize is still, that little ribbon is on the back of that photo. It hangs in my sunroom, and I think of you every single time that I
Well,
look at that photo.
there's that story, and then I quite often take the long way to Monmouth when I do work over there. I take 164, and there's a corn crib out there that's on the right-hand side, on the north side, and that was one of those places where Ted and I just parked the car. We didn't bother anything, or
Sure.
we were just out of the car taking pictures around. So every time I pass by there, I think about.
There were some great photos from that day, though. Like, it was sunset
Yep.
and the light coming through. Like,
Yep.
there's like finger spacings in between each of the boards, and this light that was coming
my.
through. And I took this picture of Kent, and he's like crouched down, and he's got his big camera, and he's taking a picture of something close up.
We hope you enjoy our chat with picture maker and moment catcher, Kent Kriegshauser, on episode 10 of A Little Off Track.
And here's a great line from the Faces song the song's called Ooh La La, where Ronnie Wood sings, "I wish that I knew what I know now when I was younger."
When I was younger.
I wish I pushed myself to try and get better and better and better, and I wish that I had some of the vision that I have now back when I worked for the Daily Herald, because I've learned there's a difference between taking a photo and making a photo. And taking a photo doesn't require, but making a photo, is when you kind of almost have a pre-visualization
Sure.
of how you think what you're looking for, or what you're trying to do.
I rarely hear
The
that.
strategy behind
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
He's the only one that says making a photo, by the way. And you know you're around a real photographer.
Well,
You do
I love
know.
that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
and you can hear it.
but that
when
sounds a
someone
little
says, I made
snobbish.
this photo, you know that they thought about
Yes.
what went into that.
Absolutely.
But that,
Because-
that starts to sound a little pretentious, and
No,
I
it
don't
doesn't
mean it
at
that
all.
way. You
Doesn't
know?
at all.
No,
Yeah.
here's the difference. Like
Everybody
I'm gonna-
already knows you're pretentious. Don't worry about that part.
No.
You're gonna
Kidding.
take a photo, you just snap it. When you make a photo, you're thinking about what is behind that person. Where is the light coming from? Can I move them over into this direction so that the light hits this side of the face, or so that there's not that ugly whatever the hell that is behind them?
Yeah.
You're consciously looking at the angles in which that it's made, and that's the difference.
Well, and
right
sometimes in newspaper photography, especially at breaking news, you didn't get that luxury.
Right.
You had to react. So you
Yeah.
were sort of taking a photo.
Yeah.
And now that I do what I do as a freelance photographer, I have a little bit more direction, and then I'm making the photo. more.
We talk about all the holly jolly fun stuff of Bulls and Bears and Blackhawk games, but there was a blood and gore that you had to be present at too, I'm sure, over the years. So it wasn't always a pleasant day at the newspaper.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Oh, I
Or
hadn't even
fires,
Considered
or-
that.
Yeah.
I had
Not
even
at all.
considered
It's
that.
a bad day for people. And I don't. That's a deep subject that we could again spend countless hours. I will say that over the years, some of the reactions that I've seen, and some examples I can think of down here with the Galesburg paper, there were it caused a big ruckus and backlash with the paper, and it seems like my observation is that we see photos when we newspapers, we would see photos from a third world country, and it might get you, but it didn't cause you to overreact. But when it's
Because you didn't know where it was.
but when it's a local situation and people know, all hell would sometimes break loose at the newspaper when the phone would be ringing. And
Well, you touched
Yeah.
a nerve, and then hopefully you could also see that you took a great picture at the end of that. But
Yeah.
but you're right. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. People's feelings.
and the argument would be, what is the point of that photo?
Sure.
Yeah.
If somebody's house burned down because they left candles near a Christmas tree or something, sometimes there's lessons to be learned.
Sure.
And I'm enough of I get up every morning hopefully with a good attitude, but I also know that life is not always cute kids running through water sprinklers, that there's
It's
some
not?
hard things. There's some hard things going on out
Yeah,
there. And so
right.
I always felt my job was to document life and what was going on. The good side of it, the bad side of it.
well, and I think
I'd much rather do the good side.
I
one of
bet.
those things that kind of points to that is something that Brian Prescott said to us, which was, it might not always be a good phone call that you get. Sometimes someone is going to call and they're going to complain, but you sparked a reaction.
Yeah.
Like you created something inside of them that was provocative enough
Yeah.
to call.
Yep.
Or in the same instance, you made an image that did something to the point where you didn't just flip the page and go on to the next story.
That's-
You felt like, I have to sound off about
That's
this.
exactly correct, Ted. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. Most of the time, I've had far more great experiences or good experiences than bad or tragic experiences.
Well,
Yeah.
and I was probably
behind the
I
camera.
called all the time. I'm like, did you see that piece of shit that Kent got in the paper yesterday? That thing was trash.
Oh wait, right above your head too. Look at that in my Volkswagen bus. That's Kent right there. That's Stuff the Bus. So Kent took
Right
that.
here?
Yeah. That's the first person I think,
Wow.
first picture Kent ever took of me.
Good Lord, you look like you're 12 years old in that picture.
2002.
You do look like a baby.
Look at his hair.
So
He's
you
so
studied
cute.
you studied photography at Western. Did that take you down just an art appreciation path in general? I mean, are there other mediums that get you as passionate as photography, or has it always just been
Porn.
the thing?
Sorry, go.
He's relentless.
I'm glad the videos are rolling, so it can just show me shaking my head.
Yes. Plausible deniability.
Mandy, I do appreciate art, other forms of art, painting, but not anywhere near to the degree of photography.
Yeah.
I just can't. It's
That Well, and that
It's way more photography. I did study at Western. Most of how I became what I am is through practical experience or working around, which is working around other photographers or being inspired by other photographers. You know, I love to go to a museum. I love to look at paintings.
Sure.
I should read more than I read, but photography is way up there.
Yeah.
And so is music.
Yeah.
And I don't play. I'm not a trained musician.
But before we go into
Well-
deep into the music,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you know, it was hockey, it was basketball, it was NASCAR, but maybe the greatest sporting event of all, childbirth.
Like our A Little Off Track logo, Josh Dixon hooked us up with his mad graphic design skills. Put him on your next project and see his work at joshuadixonart.com.
Can we talk a little bit about how I've just heard a little bit that you do birth photography? Is that right?
That is correct. I have photographed 2 births.
Does this go back to the? No, never mind.
And I'm gonna
Whole view of the catcher's mitt right there.
Apparently you must have a mutual friend, or we have a mutual friend.
I had just heard that you had done it, and I found it so interesting. Part of me wished that I had done it, had it
Really?
photographed.
There are young men out there
little
right
bit.
now going to buy cameras. They're like, wait, we can do that?
Right?
That's part of being a photographer?
photographer.
Kent knew this a long time
But
ago.
because, you know, I mean, talk about traumatic, right? I mean, there is a side to childbirth that is scary, that is near death.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, it could go either way. Let's just say that, right? I mean, talk about not all children running through sprinklers. Like there are moments, and you're invited into the intimacy of that.
That's probably the most intimate thing I've ever photographed in my life, and that's I until you would have brought this up. It's not that I'm at a loss for words, but I've
You've seen a handful of vaginas.
I've seen babies. I've seen babies born. I've seen a couple of babies born, and I've seen people get hurt or the aftermath of bad accidents.
Yeah.
Life and
But
death
you have
through the
you have
camera
been
lens.
many times or a handful of times invited into that intimate moment.
Twice.
Wow.
Twice. And Brian Lanker was a photographer at the Topeka Capital Journal back in the 60s and 70s. I'm going to loosely in there on the time frame. And Brian, people think, oh, my God. And other people think, well, who on earth would want to do that? I admire your curiosity. Brian Lanker did a thing on childbirth. I think it might have been home childbirth. And it won a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
That's great.
So, I mean, there's tasteful ways.
Well, think about it at that time. Like, men probably weren't even seeing that. Like, they were sitting in the waiting room waiting while hey, congratulations, you had a son, or congratulations, you had a daughter. So like, to see
What is that consultation like when a woman calls you? Tell me about.
Well, it was the woman and
good
her husband, and I had never given it any thought. But it's like, well, I gave it some thought, and I said, sure, I think I can do this. Now, you guys know me. What I look back on, those 2 experiences are actually the second time around. I'm a very type A person, and it's like I felt like I had to document every moment that was going on.
Yeah.
When the woman was probably trying to be calm, cool, and collected. And so I look back on the first time and I think, oh my God, did I cause that poor woman even more stress and anxiety?
Yeah, how do you lose yourself in that room without getting in the way,
you try
right?
and be a fly on the wall.
Rule 1, wide angle lens.
Yeah. That's stay out of the way.
Yeah.
Karmically, you know you're fucked, right? You know that. Just throwing that out there.
I'm sorry.
Ted.
This isn't me trying to be funny, but Kent does love the fisheye.
Yeah.
He loves the fisheye shot.
I use
Mandy, I'm not just saying that to try to be
When
funny.
it works, it works.
So the delivery of those shots, pun intended. I didn't mean to.
Good.
not-
No, good.
Unintended.
How is that? How is that? I mean, some beautiful stuff come out of there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I hope so. I hope the family feels that way.
Yeah. From the battle in the beginning to it happening, and then the joy afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
You got all of those stages. That's pretty great.
Honest to God, I would give almost anything to have a picture of my wife the very first time that she held
Hugged the
Aurora.
baby?
Yeah.
Aurora. Yeah.
Well, because there was...
I was available for video. You hired me before.
my God.
I don't know why you didn't hire me again.
No,
That's a
thank
good
you.
point.
No, thank you. There's coffee. You spilled coffee on me.
He would, too.
He would.
Oh, sorry. Did that burn?
Yeah, so sorry.
You're
Yeah.
screwbard.
Both times, Kent, was it you and the couple, and
There was a midwife.
there was a midwife.
There was
yeah.
a midwife. The second time, I worked with a midwife, the same midwife both times, and I think, again, my excitability and want to get every single shot and capture every moment. The second time around, the lighting in the room was like a coal
Scant.
mine. Oh, it was like a
yeah.
coal mine,
Oh.
and so I wasn't able to do quite as good of a job, if you want to call it that, as
Yeah.
the second time.
Theodore.
I didn't say it. Kent said it.
What did I say?
Well, I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you about it because I remember hearing about it and just like thinking that was a cool thing that somebody would have wanted. And, I really kind of thought it might take off. So I'm surprised that, you've only done two.
I would entertain anyone
Yeah.
that with, there's certain things that I won't do, but that would.
Would you have? Is that something you would have thought about?
Yeah, I think I would have thought about it because like
that-
you're so in it and you're just
Right.
surviving it, right? I had never done it before. It was horrible,
Yeah.
right? But magical. And I knew like every woman who's ever had a baby has gotten through this, so I can do this. But like you're not with the wherewithal to say,
Oh, I
hey,
want a
take a
photo right
picture
now.
of me
Yeah.
laboring,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah.
amazing, and I mean, us men. I'm doing the flex mode.
Yeah.
But anybody that, and I'm not a father, so I'd never seen that. Anybody that doesn't think that the woman is probably not the stronger of the two species is fooling themselves. And at the second time on this childbirth.
Mandy's the foundation of this podcast.
I'm not.
That's why
I
she's
mean,
here.
my
why
hat
she's
is
here.
off. Probably within, and the second time wasn't as easy as the first. I'd say within 15 or 20 minutes of them taking the baby to get the little footprints and way and whatever they do, this woman who had just given birth and had a fairly hard time, had herself out of bed. When the father and I came back, she was just coming out of giving herself a shower.
Oh shit!
I mean,
Born in Manhattan.
So
Wow,
I'm like,
right? Smoking a cigar.
you know,
yeah.
Yeah,
I just
So,
knocked
I
this shit
mean-
out of the park.
that's cool.
you,
What a cool
you ladies are
experience.
strong people.
Well, thanks,
Yeah.
buddy. Yeah.
And what? 3 people are ever going to see those pictures, right? Those are
Yeah,
so
they're
personal.
for you.
They're the most personal
no, they're
pictures
for
in the
you.
world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I can see Kent's eye. Like I can see his photos and his photographic style and like the behind the shoulder. You're not seeing like, oh my God, there's a baby coming out of that thing. You're seeing
Sure.
what is happening on the faces
Well, and
of
you're-
the people that are involved.
Again, to keep it somewhat
Yeah.
in check, you're shooting from angles, and you're shooting from angles that are hopefully quote unquote tasteful.
Anything you say in this moment is going to be taken. It's funny. It's all right.
Well, it's
all right.
These people. Here's the cap to the whole thing. After 2 childbirths of the same family, they now refer to me as Uncle Kent. They
Right?
do.
That's
That's
a bonding experience.
Pretty great.
That second one
but
did
I will
have
say
curly
this.
hair.
I only have one child, right? Because
Theodore.
I remember all too well. It just never left me. So if I had the photos, there would absolutely be no chance of a second child because it would be like, oh no, that's just as bad as I remember.
Yeah, and
you
I-
see Mandy like grabbing onto Balzer. What did you do to me?
No, I was like a silent sufferer. I likened it to, I felt like a soldier on the battlefield who was just dying. Really. And I told my midwife that after the fact, because it was just such a long, in the movies, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then 12 minutes later, there's the baby, and it was 32 hours.
Yeah.
The second time I was there, and then there was a false alarm, and I was sent home, and then called back early the next morning.
Oh Oh my
Holy
God.
cow.
So you,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was kind of fun for me. Not, I want to say fun. It was, I thought I was there and I was going to be spending the night at the hospital, and the hospital staff, I got a recliner with a nice warm blanket, and I was like in for the long haul. And they're like,
Yeah.
you might as well go home because this isn't going to happen. So then about 5 hours later,
You get the call.
you get the call.
Yeah.
We'll call you. Yeah.
Not too many families have their own documentarium. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uncle Kent.
Yeah.
Uncle Kent.
I love it.